All right, it's all happening. Welcome, everyone. Happy Wednesday. This is day three of our Agentic software factory building. Day one and day two were pretty simple. What happened was that we decided to go ahead and stand up the environment that makes all of this stuff run. So our applications, the backing infrastructure that makes those applications work. A lot of the problems that we have here at OpenTHC is that our apps are not what you might call 12-factor apps. And 12-factor apps have a lot of advantages because, well, what they do is they allow, development and production rollouts to happen in a certain way. They're usually immutable. Since the apps are containerized, you can set them up in different scenarios, test them or prep them for production. They're really helpful. Um, Part of what you're seeing on the screen right now isn't so much what I did to make these apps, 12-factor apps, but more like a record of what I had to do to get them into the state that they're currently in so that the track and trace app can run without interference from the CRE. The track and trace app requires a backend service like CRE, or it could be metric, or it could be biotrack, in order to make traceability reports that get sent to the government to so that cannabis operators can complete their paperwork, do their legally required reporting, and a bunch of that other kinds of stuff. So, I'm going to take you through what we did between day two and day three, parentheses today. And then we will walk through how the apps are working. And then I'm going to show you my initial design for the software factory. All right, so I worked with the Gemini CLI agent, and what we did is we fixed the SSO container that was failing to start. That's what I was struggling with on um, day two. And what we found was that something was wrong with our container in that it wasn't setting the right entry point for the application runtime to start. So we got that fixed in the compose override file, and I didn't fix the container at large because it still, merits some discussion. The app container only uses the SSO controller on certain domain names. Yeah, so that was an environment configuration that was missing. And I had to fit or set the ULID not in the app config, but in the containers environment. So again, that was another thing that I set up with the uh, compose override file. I guess I could show you guys that stuff, and it isn't a problem. Docker git hub compose override. So SSO got that entry point thing set. And I thought what I was missing here was the environment getting set somehow, but it's not correct. Shit, it is getting set in the config. My bad. There's a lot to remember here. So there's like a block of config in the etc config file. In the app directive, this thing had to get set. Yeah, I actually got really confused about these origin parameters because this is the host name for reaching the service on the outside of the container. But if, the intention with the Docker GitHub containers was that you were running that on your own system. And so that you would just go to app.openthc.me, which resolves back to the loopback. If you're running the containers on your local host system, that's really convenient. You don't need to do any, DNS setup. You don't need to know what the, container's IP address is or doing any, port mounting things. All of that stuff is just like configured for you, ready to go. And you just visit a very friendly domain name. So whatever. SSO was missing some NPM assets, jQuery, Bootstrap, jQuery UI, and Fonts Awesome. I got those installed. What I noticed was that there is not a build runner that manually adds those libraries into our web root. So I had to do that manually. And I just noted it here because I didn't actually like write that script, but we do need it. And I need to figure out how to get that included in the app at some point. But it's like not super important for our purposes today. I just got the UI working. Off to scope. There is in the SQL container, Docker compose exec SQL dash. Oh yeah. In OpenTHC auth, there is a table called auth service that tells you about all of the services in the network. And the ones that we really care about are these ones that are labeled .me or .local. So that guy, that guy, that guy, lab doesn't matter. But basically, we just had to set the context list table or column all of all of those different services, and they just needed to be these string literals. Nothing fancy, but it didn't work with that, so I did that. Yeah, this thing actually turned out to be false. How did I fix the missing license table? There might actually be some stashed code in the app. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think there was some confusion. Like this is where the AI got confused over which service it was hitting, whether or not that was the external CRE service that exists somewhere else, or if it was actually hitting the container that it was supposed to be hitting. But either way, it's doing this now. That's not a problem anymore. I'm going to just delete it. All right. So I will click through the app now, and we will maybe see some cool stuff. All right. So if you're singing along at home, I don't mind if you log into the system. It's just a demo system. The service isn't connected to a production database. It's demo at openthc.me, and the password is passweed, PASSEE weed. That's what the dashboard looks like. Here's the plants page. It's the cultivation manager. Here's what the inventory table looks like. Here's what an empty sales table looks like while it's very broken. I'm not really sure what's going on here. It looks like there's some schema drift. It's something that we can't handle. Here's some core data definitions that are worthwhile to know if you're just following along for the first time at home. Section, variety. Sections are just like rooms in a facility. Um, so in like a nursery, when you're growing pot, you might have a nursery. I can spell, make things a lot easier. Some CREs like BioTrack delineate between inventory rooms and plant rooms. There's no real good reason for this, just something that they did when they designed their system. And we have this carryover legacy artifact in our system still as well. The CRE is capable of delineating between different types of rooms, or as we call them, sections. Um, but there really isn't a functional difference between them. So I'm just going to leave it as nursery because that works for everything, and I don't need to change it. I'm going to close that page. Variety is what you might call a strain or a cultivar. There's so many of these out in the world. I think Bob Marley's favorite strain was like lamb's bread or something like that. It's lamb's breath. It is lamb's bread, often referred to as lamb's bread. Who knows? We're going with bread. Come on, spell check. The sativa indica split is a parameter that's actually required in metric, and there's no reason that this UI should require it, but it does. Surprise. And close that page. Products are a regulatory piece of information that agencies need to know so that they're aware of what kind of form a product is in when it's being reported to them. So, it's just their underlying product type so that they can tell, like a plant, a seed, harvested material, retail ready material, concentrates, different forms of concentrates apart from each other. Probably the most important piece of this data type is these package types and unit weight and unit count um, parameters. Flower lots are one of those product types that is really special to the regulated slash commercialized industry in that, there's no real differentiation between harvest material flower and harvest material flower lots. The differentiation comes down to, what the regulations say that producers have to do at different times when the, you know, material is being processed. And harvest material flower is material that has been taken right off the tree, fresh, possibly still wet, possibly frozen, possibly whole plants, but not ready for production workflows yet. Harvest material flower is when that material actually gets processed and batched into regulation sized lots. I think in Washington State, this is 50 pounds. And then they can get individual lots can get tested. And, like for Washington State, you have to send one test per production lot. So every 50 pounds, you need one quality assurance test. Let's make some seeds. I'm gonna make these seeds, and I want seeds because I want to make some cultivation plants. These are bulk. Sometimes they're unit count each, and that's okay, as in they're counted individually. That's a crazy way to I should not say that. That's a really unmanageable way to manage your seeds in a production environment for these farmers because there can just be so many seeds. I know one farmer that was in Canada was using kilograms to measure his seeds, and that it seems hard to imagine several hundred kilograms of seeds, but that's something that you can do. Oh, it needs a name. All right. So just a quick, tutorial of how OpenTHC app slash weed tracker works. We're gonna make a lot of 1,000 kilograms of seeds that are lamb spread. I hope that works. Hell yeah. System knows that these are, propagation materials, so we can just actually go straight into the planting workflow. Tell it how many plants that we want to make, 50, and it will subtract 50 from our seeds. Boom. So now we have 50 plants. We can go ahead and pretend that some time has passed and harvest them. Gonna say I got 1,000 grams of material out of this. Is that, no, it's 100, that's 100,000. Cool. So that's just break up, harvest collections into two types so people can do different things and have flexibility with their workflow operations. And the reason why we do this is because, farmers handle the material differently at different points of time. So one of the ways is that sometimes they just chop down all of their trees, wrap it up, put it into a freezer, and wait until somebody's ready to buy it. Some people, dry it right away and then do this net collection later. In the first instance where they just like wrap it up and freeze it, they would go through the net collection and report exactly the same way that they reported for the raw collection. Um, doesn't matter how you do it, both are valid. Here, I'm going to say that, we wound up getting, you know, one order of magnitude less than what the raw weight started. Don't really know what the standard loss is. I'm sure a data scientist could talk into our ear about it all day. But another wet thing that you can report here is a grade B net weight. The workflow that we're trying to emulate here is a normal agricultural workflow. So this is what happens when farmers, harvest potatoes straight out of the ground with a bunch of dirt still in them. And now they need to go through a process of like separating good material from bad material, good potato from bad potato. Um, and so your initial raw weight right out of the ground might be different than what happens when after you've done, that initial wheat from the chaff kind of like workflow. And that gives you an opportunity to make a second inventory output here. But I'm not going to do that because I haven't even created a grade B product type, which would be one of those, you know, trim material, waste, shake, that kind of stuff. Here's a harvest material flower. You can lot this up into a production size lot. Ooh, I thought we made the harvest material, the flower lot. No, we're missing something called flower lot that I was harping on earlier. Not a big deal, man. We can just like click that, go back to our inventory, find our lamb spread here. Will it lot? Hell yeah, it will. There's no maximum weight defined for this region. It's because we're dealing with a dummy stubbed region. Not everything is fully plugged in. So I will just take a note. Missing stuff. maximum weight or no CRE. It's probably okay that's not there. Allocate full. Why is it so slow? And will it blend? Hmm. Yeah, that's weird. But yeah, that's just a quick tour of the kind of software environment, that we're working with here. So next on our agenda is to talk about our software factory design. Software factories, they are supposed to be this piece of infrastructure that we can use that plugs into our uh, different, product requirements infrastructure. So stuff like an issue tracker, stuff like a commit tracker, Git, and operates on the product based on context that comes from stuff like the issue tracker. Um, I'm learning about these design patterns for software factories. This is very new to me, but we are trying to automate some of the development that we do here. We spend a lot of time on engineering at OpenTHC. There's two engineers on staff, including myself. Um, and if we can spend less time doing it and more time focusing on, growing the business or, growing use of the product or finding new products that we can build revenue with, we're going to try to take those opportunities. So I'm still, like I said, I'm still learning about software factories. There's a lot of stuff that people are putting together to build their own factories. I'm not really sure what the big state of the art is. A lot of people are trying some really funky and crazy things, man. They're putting, uh, AIs in a while loop, while true, and then the prompt is like a Ralph Wiggum prompt, where they, just tell the AI to try again and to make no mistakes. Simple things like that. We're going for a little bit more sophisticated of a structure for our software factory, in that it needs to follow a couple of principles. The agents are going to be decoupled from each other, and they're also going to be stateless. I was harping on the 12 factor app a little while ago. This is kind of where the 12 factor agent uh, idea comes into play. Uh, we need the agents to be internally stateless and highly scoped to their individual job. So that means we might need, more than just a handful of agents, and they need to be able to know exactly what they're doing, what they're asked to do, without needing a whole lot of everyday training, walking through the app and basically being handheld through their job. So something that we're going to spend some time on. Externalized state is another requirement. Agents need some sort of external memory store. I think OpenClaw uses SQLite. There's revision control that we will also be using. I think SQLite has a vector database feature that we're going to be trying to make use of. The purpose is that, if an agent loses all of its context window, or something else happens, we can spin up a fresh agent, load in the context that we need to from the memory store, and resume work as if nothing happened. All right, in the next phase, we will be configuring agents and their personas and trying to establish a hierarchy for them to operate in. The idea behind this is that it mimics human engineering teams, and that's probably something that these LLMs are already trained on, is a lot of engineering writing. The orchestrator or lead agent is going to route these subtasks to the sub agents um, for their specific specialization. So I don't know if that is an anti-pattern of the God agent. I've heard of a lot of people criticizing, a lead pattern or a God agent that is capable of doing a bunch of stuff um, and is also responsible for the task of delegation. I've had some problems with my own, initial forays into agentic uh, environments where you have a primary agent that you're talking to that's like the greatest and best model, um, and it's very high touch by the human operator, but it still winds up doing the bulk of the work on its own, and that's not something that I want it to do in the software factory use case. We need something that will reliably delegate tasks to sub-agents. Our fleet so far, this is what I think it's going to look like: is the orchestrator lead, a scribe for documentation, an engineer that writes code, and a tester that writes and runs test cases. We're going to be using something called Lobster, which is included in the OpenClaw environment to prevent hallucination loops and to keep our guys on track. It's supposed to be some sort of guardrails for the agent doing, just kind of whatever the hell it wants. Keeps it focused more closely on using the tools that we want it to use, doing the workflows that we want it to do, and making it a little bit more deterministic. And then, later we'll get into fleet coordination and external integration. Some caveats that I've talked about: we don't use any CI/CD. Some of these 12-factor agent paradigms have come down to the uh, the agents having awareness over, what CI/CD is doing, but that kind of stuff just doesn't exist in our environment. We could create it. I'm really not sure what that would be scoped to do, or if it would add any value to the kind of stuff that we have right now. I'm still kind of learning about CI/CD systems. But anyway, that's not something that we have to worry about. I want it to run test cases on the host environment that it's on. And I want it to do that because it's currently or needs to be configured to run the test cases in a certain way, so that, if they're passing, we know that they're, not false positives. And I need to rig up get the old GitLab issue tracker for the task assignment. So go ahead and start on phase one here. Foundational architecture, decouple and stateless agents. So this guy is using Obsidian as an extended brain for his agent by having it journal in markdown files. It's not a bad system. I don't use Obsidian. It's not an open source software. And I do not need my journal being locked down by the whims of something that is not open source. OpenClaw remembers things by writing plain markdown files in your agent's workspace. The model only remembers what gets saved to disk. Memory wiki. Interesting. I'm hesitant to make the OpenClaw read everything in one memory markdown file. Um, I've heard that the context window can shrink really quick if you write too much stuff to one file. It's not that big files are a problem. It's that a really big file can really be a problem and shrink that context window. And it can make agent execution slow down and bottleneck because it has too much going on in its head to move fast. So while I'm studying this stuff, I'm taking note of stuff like memory search and memory get, because having things in memory.md is cool, but I want it to be able to place the right thing in maybe a different place so that it just remembers that it needs to use memory search, and look someplace specific rather than knowing everything all at once and potentially use something that is not relevant for what it's trying to work on. Hmm. I wonder if I have a OpenClaw something or another already up. Hold on while I work in another window. So weird. I'll let you see what I'm working on because it's no longer dangerous. Oh my God. See fucking down votes. One up vote. Damn. Damn, damn, damn. Four point eight. Is that where we are? 4.5? Tell me you could complain about that shit again. Downgrade. No. Okay, I guess. 4.5. All right. Oh, How's the stream going, guys? Does it suck without music? Do I operate the Task flow. Vanadium die on us? Why? Uh, that's why we gotta use Tmux or screen, kids. Like, this is stupid. Also unresponsive. Vanadium over here. I'm not really sure why yet. Not really going to worry about vanadium too much. Got an old laptop here. It used to be called mustard gas, but now its host name is Chula Vista. We could probably go ahead and just use that while we, experiment with this design pattern. I was kind of hoping vanadium could be my experiment, um, but I can't. Haha. Chula Vista is connected to an external network. It can only go out. It's not a VPS. I mean, it's not connected to the internet in the same way that the VPS is. Let's see. Yup. Doesn't seem like a good idea to do this while secrets are just like out in the open. It's not pairing. It's not sessions. It's approvals. Oh my God, why can't I remember it? God damn it. Criminy. Oh my God, is it devices? Very annoying. I think I'm all connected. Is it Clawflow, or is it Lobster? The speed at which these projects are moving is incredible, but also really hard to keep up with. It might be tasks. Shoot, I think this one had a different problem. Yeah, this one can't talk to Olama for some stupid reason. God, this is annoying. Yeah, I still can't figure out why it won't talk to Olama. That's crazy. Oh man. Just give me a second here while I set that um, API key. Okay. Now we should have an agent here that we can talk to problems. Why aren't you here? Damn it. All right, I need a 5 minute break. I will be right back, boys and girls. right, I'm about to come back. There ain't no food or sweet treats that I could have while I'm out here just working. That wiped all the viewers. Good for you. So I've decided to just talk to an agent about how to set up this lobster stuff. There was a note in this documentation that said that agents are the ones that do this. Damned if I could find it now. Has to not replace sessions, cron jobs, or heartbeats. You are my new agent. You should ask all kinds of questions. You should strive to ask better questions. Highest leverage problem on your plate right now, and what part of it do you want to hand off to me first? I want to build a software factory, but I am just starting to learn different components of this. Currently, I am learning about an open claw concept called flows driven by something called lobster. Speaking of which, is vanadium back up? Yeah, what the hell happened? Something. This is an under-resourced machine, so something happening, like one of those processes that we started earlier. You know, stuff happens. Now that we're in a screen environment, I'm going to go ahead and try to run the npm update. Think of ClawFlow as the conveyor belt to your factory floor. It manages the state, keeps track of whether a job is running, waiting on a human, or finished. Lobster is the blueprint for the assembly line. It's YAML, defines the business logic. Lobster is where you say, run the fetch task. If the result is X, send it to business bucket. If it's Y, spin up a sub-agent to investigate. Hmm. What are the raw materials and finished goods? What exactly triggers this factory? Ensure a ticket, a Slack message, a loose ID, and a text file. It's the final output. Where is the bottleneck? Factories are built to solve scaling problems. Part of your current software creation process is the most manual, tedious, or error-prone. Is that where we should build our very first flow? Who is doing the work? Why is that line breaking? Man, this stuff is tedious. Want a GitLab issue marked with a certain label. E1 trigger and agents to trigger a lead agent. Where is the bottleneck? Factories are built to solve scaling problems. What part of your current software creation process is the most manual, tedious, or error prone? Writing code is the bottleneck. However, getting an agent to write code is not. Takes the most amount of time is like getting it onboarded. Accurately determine if it is green. Fielding. Also have not done a great job testing of test coverage. So existing and new things need to get tested. We should also build some infrastructure to test. Who's doing the work? It's me. Spoiler. Want a coder, engineer, agent to do the code. And make pull requests. This is right. Test cases. The lead agent is who should be communicating with me. Face. I am describing the triage, delegate, verify. Hmm. AST parsers. That's a three-letter acronym that I've heard before. Yeah, abstract syntax tree. Hmm. Damn it. Something's wrong with vanadium. Who knows? Oh my God. What the hell is going on? Thought I did that in the right container. Discovery flow agent sounds like a good addition. We need to discuss memory more, actually. Um, that's the word that they were using was Sorry, hitting all my hotkeys. This thing says Markdown is vastly superior to SQLite. The LLM's thinking text, not tables. If you put context in SQLite, the agent has the right SQL queries to find it, which is brittle. Human in the loop. You can operate a Markdown file. OpenClaw is built for Markdown. Memory for long-term facts and memory with Markdown files for daily logs and specific project contexts. How memory search and memory get work. There are a card catalog and a library. Memory search. An agent asks, where is the payment gateway logic? The tool does a semantic search across all Markdown memory files and returns snippets with file paths and line numbers. Kind of like how ACK and grep work. Memory get. The agent uses this to pull only lines that it specifies into its active context window. How this works in our factory. When the discovery agent finishes using ACK or grep to map out all the relevant PHP files for an issue, it shouldn't just hand a massive string to the engineer. It should write a file like memory and then a name. The engineer uses read or memory search to pull exactly what it needs without blowing up its context window. Updated factory line. Cron trigger every X hours queries GitLab for P1 issues. Lead agent creates a claw flow for the issue. The discovery agent uses ACK or grep, reads docs, writes context map to memory. Engineer reads the context map, writes PHP code. Tester agent runs PHP unit, fails, sends logs back to the engineer. Loop until it passes. Lead agent opens the PR and notifies you. To actually build this, we need to connect the factory to the physical world. The GitLab connection needs an API access and a glab tool. When the tester agent runs PHP unit, where is it running? Does this workspace already have PHP Composer and the necessary dependencies installed locally? Or do we need to execute these tests in specific Docker container? it's simple for me to. Okay, let's look for tools. I don't remember what version of Mac this is. SW vers. All right, great. The thing's done installing. Outstanding. Let's do this in a different window. Is there a login command? I didn't see one. Off, maybe? Perhaps. If in a Git repository, GLab will detect and suggest GitLab instances from remotes. Yeah, that's helpful. My access token, my GitLab instance. Interactive. Okay. Let's just give it a shot. Yeah, that works for me. Okay. I'm expecting it to kind of open up a browser window, but it's totally not doing that. Let me investigate. Not in any of the places I could find it. Oh well. I will do this in a different window. I hope that you guys don't wind up being able to see my token. No, look at that. It's going to do the asterisk thing. Give me a pat. Give me the pat. Generate a token. Um, press the So confused. I'm doing like GitLab permissions over here, and it's, you know, they were right. This is fine grained as hell, and I'm confused. What do I need? What do I not need? Like why? Create, merge, create, update, create, create, update. What does updating a commit even mean? All right, I think I have my token now. Crazy. All right, I'll be back. I need another break. All right, I'm slapping a bow on this, and we're stopping. Thanks everybody for being here.